Good afternoon. Half a day, the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriations and Housing is now called to order. For the record, today is Tuesday, July 26th, and the time now is 2:02. Notice for this budget hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Monday, July 18, followed by July 20th. The committee will now hear Bill 276-36 COR, introduced by the Committee on Rules at the request of the I Maga'hågan Guåhan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam, an act making appropriation for the operation of the executive branch of the Government of Guam for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2023, making other appropriations and establishing miscellaneous and administrative provisions relative to the Department of Labor's budget. None of my colleagues will join me. I guess they're taking care of other businesses, but we'll still proceed, okay? Those testifying for the Department of Labor are invited to the panel. We have the Director, Dave DeSola, Greg Massey, Gerard Tovis, and Victoria Mavnas. She must be the money lady. All right. General rules of this budget hearing. Written testimony shall be submitted to my committee, and please provide my legislative staff with written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and then the testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. If you don't have anything written, please provide something written after you testify, please. Those testifying will be allowed to present oral testimony. Once you're done, please remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by the members, whoever arrives. Otherwise, I'm it, okay? Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or the nature of the agenda, which is relative to the Department of Labor's budget. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of the general rule of conduct will result in removal from the budget hearing. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and will be asked to leave. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Other questions may be submitted to the committee for submission to the agency or department for responses. Please state your name and your title for the record. I'd ask now the panel to please rise while the sergeant arms will swear you in for your testimony. And we are joined this afternoon by Senator Telo Tariwe.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, DOL affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Mr. Chair, under roll. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Arm. We will now begin to discuss Bill 276-36 COR in relative to the Department of Labor's budget. Mr. Dave, you're it.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting us to come down and explain our budget. I appreciate it. First off, if you look at our budget, you'll notice the amount is $3,270,150, which we believe will meet our goals and our mission for the next fiscal year. This request is an increase of $297,950 from last fiscal year. And the breakdown is in personnel at $158,000 and operations at $139,000 to make up that $297,000. So just to kind of give you a quick overview of what we've been doing at the department, I'll quickly go through some of the things that we've been doing so you have an idea of how this money is well spent. At our AJC, you know that we're very busy. We just had a very successful job fair, which we had 90 employers and over 2,000 people attending with hundreds hired on the spot. Everything that we heard and all the feedback was very successful. I can tell you that 60% of the participants were unemployed, 17% were looking for jobs with more hours, and 8% were identified for looking for a career change. Most 60% were high school grads, 17% were college, and 13% were non-high school. Just to kind of give you a breakdown of a quick breakdown of what the participants that came to our job fair. We are working in partnership right now with the Department of Youth Affairs to look at a in-school youth year-round program, kind of spinning off on the summer youth training program. And we're working out those details now, and we look forward to announcing something good in the near future. We've also been very successful in just recently the bus driver boot camp for DPW. We graduated 14 participants or apprentices with a bus driving license, and they are already on board and ready to start the new school year. The NDWG, the National Dislocated Worker Grant that we used during the pandemic, was nationally recognized for success. We had 152 placements, or 52% of the total participants hired, and with the majority of the balance going back to their original jobs. So that was a very successful program. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm sure you've been seeing in the newspapers continuously that we continue to work with our training partners like GCC and Guam Marianas Training to do ship repair boot camps. We did heavy equipment boot camps. We did paramedic programs for the fire department. We did police officer training apprentices programs. We did CNA, certified nursing assistant programs, bus driving programs, just to name a few. We continuously expand and look to help our unemployed or look for career paths, new career paths, and train them into new high-sustaining, good-paying jobs. Just to quickly gloss over the PUA, it's still ongoing. The program has stopped. We gave out $108 million to close to 30,000 people. And just so you know, I know there were some questionable costs of $23 million. That was something that we said last year. Those were the overpayments, and those are mostly due to fraud, misrepresentation, and then people making mistakes and not quite following the correct guidelines. I'm happy to say that several months ago, US DOL came out with a relaxed waiver requirements, and just this month alone, I was able to waive $850,000, and we have still 500 plus more waiver requests coming. So we are being diligent in trying to relieve those people who made mistakes and misunderstood the program, and not have them have to pay it back. I'm sure you know that the ARP funds, that we received just over $1 million in ARP funds, and that's going to help us fund 2 junior economists. We are trying to prepare for succession training. I'm sure you all know Gary Hiles, and I'm sure you know that he has over 40 years in Gov Guam. And we have no economist in government that is preparing to step in those shoes. So these 2 junior economists, if I could find an economist, I would hire them, are going to be working with him and help us get our surveys and keep it on track. We're also using it, the balance of it, to help with the AJC staff. With this influx of unemployed after the COVID pandemic, we need extra staff to handle the influx of participants coming looking for work and for our job fairs. As far as BLS, they continue to do what they do. They're continuously putting out their reports. OSHA consultation has several years now we've been out of high risk. We continue to do well, and the grantors are very pleased. We're doing all kinds of consultation and helping those people stay in compliance so that enforcement doesn't come on island and hit them. And same with our DOSH. With the retirement of that one person, we have somebody stepping in temporarily and training up. So that I'd like to at least let you know. Our fair employment practice is working very hard getting out and doing the fair chances and handling the all our fair employment needs, making sure that they are all in compliance and helping them understand what those requirements are. The one area that we have a huge, that we're doing a big reorg is workers' comp. As you know, workers' comp has been inundated with worker comp claims. I know that we have a $1 million amount from last year that was way over the allotted $400,000. And just to let you know, 25% of that is COVID alone, not something that we could foresee or budget. But with that in mind, we're looking at streamlining and trying to get an automated system in place. We have an attorney hired 2 years now, and that, once we got that person, he became, he assisted me doing hearings, and we had a backlog of 15 years of formal hearings that I managed to clear up and that we are now current. So I'm proud of what we're doing. We're putting in the processes and procedures, working with the attorney and streamlining that department. And Helen is also streamlining the reporting. And I just want to let you know that between DOE and GPD, they make up more than 53% of those claims of all Gov Guam. And you know, a lot of that was also COVID related. So these are things that are not within our control. Lastly, I'm going to get into ALPCD and wage and hour. Greg assumed the administrator position at wage and hour and has done an excellent job. I want to commend him. We have some new staff on board that are excellent and that have been doing a great job. We have a great MOU and partnership with US DOL wage and hour, Patrick Candeletta. So we share and the workload and we help each other out, and that has been a good partnership and training. And we continue to meet the demands of the buildup. If you don't know, our latest number is we're reaching close to 3,000 H2s. And that has more than doubled in the last year. And with that influx, staffing, inspections, enforcement, everything, wage and hour that goes around that has had a multiplying effect. And that's what we are using a lot of these extra dollars in ALPCD to stay current and on top of, since the military directly isn't giving us anything, so we're using that funding stream. I do want to ask the committee's support. I know during the pre-budget hearing, we were asking as a support to rise the revenue projections for the Manpower Development Fund from $4 million to about $8 million. And that is that's the whole number. We would get 30%, of course, GCC will get the 70%. And those are based on our projections, which we have accurately have forecasted for the last 70 years. So that is a conservative, that's 60% of what we think the projections are. And so we're asking for your consideration with that. And that basically your support with our overall budget, that we feel comfortable and that we will be able to meet our demands and changes with the existing ceiling that we receive. Thank you.
All right, Dave, you answered the question I was going to ask Mr. Massey, so you get to relax, Massey. He already asked that request for that manpower adjustment. But what I'm very concerned with is that as we identified what you paid out in PUA, the number of applicants, I'm concerned, Do you know if majority of them or a good percentage of them got their job, went back to work at this, where they were laid off because of the COVID? And if a good percentage got a career change, like you mentioned, or just joined the boot camps and got a job? Do you have any numbers that we can look at it so we don't start saying we got 30,000 people unemployed. We don't have 30,000 people unemployed. No. The number should be a lot less now.
Yes. You're talking about anywhere 6,000, 7,000 to get back to pre-pandemic numbers, roughly. Our unemployment, which is at 7.2 right now, has been obviously going to be going down. And we hope to have the next unemployment report within a few weeks. We'll wait and see. We're just validating it. And it looks like it'll probably go down again a couple points. So we're moving in the right directions. We're doing what we need to do. Of course, tourism, which is the #1 industry, is just coming back. I think what I'm saying is not any rocket science, that as that industry grows, the employment needs are growing. And right now, there's a lot of jobs out there, and our people have their choice. And that's why I did the job fair, is to kind of kickstart the opportunities for participants to get an idea of what's out there. They can go to that job fair and see 90 different employers, get an idea of where they wanted to go. I had recruiters there, if the military was an option. I had my training providers there, if training was an option. I had our whole AJC staff there, providing a mini AJC there to advise them, to help them apply. And yes, things are getting better and moving forward. And as Japan opens up and that tourism hits, it's going to build. And that's what we want. We want that slow growth, because if everything was released and all the tourists were coming in, we couldn't handle it right now. There's not enough employees. And that's happening nationwide. This is not just Guam under the bubble. This is when I was in the States, a lot of restaurants, limited hours, businesses, limited hours, because they were having problems getting employment and getting those. So this is just a natural growth and a natural occurrence of the pandemic. And I think that we're in the right path, we're moving in the right direction, and the people are now shifting from getting, subsidies to knowing that our island is coming out and growing, and they need to get back to normalcy. And that's a good direction. Right now we're in that gray area. That's always going to be growing pains. And all we're going to do is I'm going to keep getting training and get creative, have job fairs, work closely with the employers, and come up with programs and services that will help the industry grow.
All right, thank you. I'd like to also recognize my colleague that has joined us, Senator Brown, who's also joined us this afternoon. Dave, I'm curious. When the COVID hit us, we didn't have unemployment. We were fortunate enough to get support from the federal government. Are you trying to create something where we can figure out how we can do the unemployment on Guam, like you find in most states or most counties in America, in the United States? I'm just curious, and if you are, please be willing to share it with us so that we can take a look at it, and then we can come up with, so I can ask my colleagues to we all join in and we take a look at how we can make it work, so that we're not in the position where you need to develop something. I mean, you probably have it already down pat if anything happens, but if we can have our own, and that everybody understands that, because my understanding is that business pay into this. It's kind of like you don't want to lose you, because and if I lose you, I already paid for what the unemployment is. But if we can get a program going, it actually just gets it right. I mean, I believe that we can take care of our own people with the program itself. But if you got a program and you guys are trying to put it together, then good, great, and I'll hear from you later. You don't have to bring it up. Just want to know if you guys are trying to put something together. Then on the same.
Yes, we are.
You are. Okay,
yes,
great.
I've met several times with US DOL. We applied for a grant to study the feasibility of having an unemployment program here. As you know, our base is very small, and running a UI program, unemployment insurance program, is very expensive. US DOL felt, along with myself, that we need to have a study done with our base, our employers, and the design of a program, that whether or not this would be feasible or payable, or whether something different would be better. And that's what basically we're waiting for, is whether or not that grant will be approved or not. And then that way we'll have a professional company that knows UI come in, look at our situation, look at our base, look at our employers, educate them a little bit, and figure out, is this the best route? Because you're right, this is an employer-paid system. Now, are employers ready to pay into this system? And what are the benefits? Do they outweigh it? And these are the kind of things that nobody here is an expert on, because we just don't have it. And that's why the best approach is to get an informed, professional look. And as soon as, I'm hoping to hear soon on the outcome of that grant. So then we know whether or not it really makes sense, what it would cost, and what kind of buy-in from the business side would be required, so that we can collectively do it as an island instead of just pushing it out. And so yes, we're taking steps to move towards getting that question answered.
All right, appreciate that, Dave. On the next issue was actually, you mentioned manpower. As more H-2 workers are coming, right? They're applying, they're coming. Are they more for in the fence or out of the fence, outside the fence? That's what I'm concerned about, because I'm more concerned with the housing costs. And if they're outside the fence, then of course the housing costs will start to drop, because it shouldn't cost more if we're bringing H-2 versus if we're hiring our own people. If you have a lot of employment here for that, then the price will just follow it.
That's a good question. And just last week I was in D.C. with the governor fighting for the NDAA, because there were amendments submitted that would have crippled the civilian side and made it impossible for us to afford an H-2 program. The governor was successful going to the House, Senate committee, and the Senate and US DOL, and effectively the Senate introduced without the amendments, and only introduced the extension, which is what we needed. Without those amendments or those regs, that would have crippled our program. So that was a huge win for us to go to DC, explain to all the parties, the House Armed Services, the Senate Armed Services, the US DOL, and other federal agencies, that these amendments that were being introduced were not good for Guam and would have crippled the housing and the civilian side. And I felt that they heard us, and we were successful in getting it at least introduced. Now the next step would be to make sure that it, during the markup or during the hearing, that other congressmen or senators don't introduce these amendments back in. But for now, it was a successful trip, and as it stands, the NDAA will just be extended from 2029 if adopted as the Senate version is done. I'm sure you've heard the adverse affected by clause that was in the NDAA. Greg and I worked very closely with USCIS. I met with them in DC, and we formulated a method for them to implement it. And that method was for me to provide a letter, just like the Admiral provides a letter that projects are associated or directly associated with the military. If a local contractor can't find workers because they're all working in the military, so this is adversely affecting his ability to hire people, then he can prove it with his data and I can support it with a letter attached to it that says, yes, this company is adversely affected, and so far 2 contractors have been successful with that letter. So we just need the rest of them to follow suit.
All right, I'm hoping during this hearing some of them are paying attention and start reaching out to you and saying, yes, we're being affected. All right?
Me too.
All right. Senator Tello, do you have any questions for the panel? And you'll be followed by Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. And good afternoon, Director De La Sola, Mr. Tovis. Good to see you. Greg, as always, and Helen. I feel like you're my old gang, minus you, Mr. De La Sola, because I once upon a time hung my hat at Department of Labor and had the opportunity to house the Women's Bureau there, which I wanted again thank the Department of Labor recognizing that the assistance of for the Women's Bureau. I'm looking at the budget here, digest, that has been provided to us, and I'm noticing on the office space rental, last year, and this is all general fund money, you know, that I'm talking about. Office space rental in FY20 was 0, but this year the request is for $440,890. Can you explain that, please? Is it Helen? Hi, Helen.
Half a day.
Yeah, just bring it a little bit closer because it's hard to hear.
Half a
That's
day.
okay.
The request for $440,000 in general fund money was because the budget ceiling that was provided to us. Last fiscal year, or this current fiscal year, our rental was absorbed by Manpower Development Fund. This next fiscal year, our budget ceiling, we had to realign up to the general fund to match our ceiling.
The only reason I'm bringing it up is because you're increasing the manpower development fund this time around. I mean, your anticipation is that it's going to actually have more funding, and we all know that with Greg standing by, knowing that this is a lot more laborers are coming in. We're going into the peak of the military buildup. I think it was 2024 is anticipated, but we're starting to see catch-up being played. We're also starting to see that the military is being more aggressive in other projects that was not anticipated with the defense, Department of Defense incorporating the THAAD, the latest one. So is there a reason why? I mean, you're increasing the manpower, you're anticipating the manpower development fund to be increased, but yet you're still...
Right, well, the budget ceiling was given, the budget was submitted. When Greg reviewed his projections, it was after we have already submitted the budget. So that's why we're coming to you today, the director's coming to you today to reconsider based on Greg's forecasting.
So then at that point, it looks like we can still provide this rental amount from the manpower development if need be. If we're starting to see the numbers going up, then, Mr. Chair, we can still have the option. When it comes to general fund, I'm very tight when it comes to that.
No, we totally understand.
Yeah, when it comes to special funds or things that are created to provide the sustainability for the agency, and you're starting to see numbers grow, then I think we should utilize that first before anything else, before tapping in the general fund. But I'm sure the chairman is going to work with the agency to maybe...
Similar to this fiscal year, our budget was always with general fund at a higher level than manpower development fund. So when the legislature passed the budget bill, you guys gave more in manpower development fund, so we had to reshift and put everything back to manpower development fund. So this year, when our ceiling came out again, general fund was a little bit higher, manpower development a little lower. So we're just going through that process again. So
absolutely understand.
If you guys do shift and increase our manpower development fund, our revenue projections, then of course we will shift based on the authority you guys give us.
Right, and I do realize it's important that we get as closest to that amount projected for the year. so that you don't have to come back to the legislature to ask for additional money that comes out. And I do realize that that's always been an issue. Is that staying true to the $72,000 in contractual service? Is that the same scenario? Because last year it was zero out of the general fund, so you covered that.
So everything down the budget line
Right.
is because we had to shift from Manpower Development Fund
Got
to
it.
general fund.
Understand. Yeah, shift it back. Okay. Yeah, like I said, I'm very tight when it comes to general fund. So-
Excuse me, Senator Tello.
Sure.
Dave, are you comfortable with that? I want to make sure that, as we're discussing here, because when Senator Tello says we're going to give you guys the manpower, I'm getting backing, okay, to help to support the manpower increase. But I want to make sure that you're able to absorb that. So we don't say you're going to absorb it and then you're struggling to absorb it. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. I want to make sure that what Senator Tello is saying.
Theoretically, I don't have a problem, but I just need to make sure that we don't wash out so much of the MDF that we don't have room for the doubling effect. These H2 numbers are going to be doubling practically every year. The manpower enforcement and inspections, the wage and hour, all that stuff is going to have a marked increase in work. And we're using those funds to help grow like we did already. So, offhand, I don't think we will have.
Yeah.
So we'll wait for you, Dave, your folks, you get it together. Send me a copy, send Senator Tello, so that we can come to an agreement of what direction we're going to go.
Right.
Okay.
We'll just look at the numbers as we
Yeah.
get closer
Sure.
to
Yes.
determine it, because I do realize that with this manpower development and what it's utilized for, with like Greg Massey's department and, also the inspectors, it's the whole Department of Labor, but, with the increase of H2 workers coming to Guam, it's also going to, also provide more assistance from Department of Labor to go over these.
One point I just
New
wanted
arrivals,
to
additional arrivals.
some of that additional monies, our state apprentice office, that grant will be going away, and we need to sustain it. Some of the monies from the MDF will be going over to that. We're also looking at using some training that are outside of GCC's realm to get different training providers and using some of those monies to help train our people into different apprenticeship positions and dollars. So it's not like it's going to sit there. I do have plans that will help our island recover and help keep our operations sustained as other grants sunset. Because our state apprentice office the grant was only to get it up and running, and then it fades away, and we're supposed to maintain it. And those are some of the dollars and that we were going to take to put in there. But
Okay.
just so as long as we can find a balance maybe between the two, we can certainly work that out.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Director, thank you. Also, it was spoken earlier about regarding the PUA and the waiving of the overpayment. And it was in a Post article, March 4th, 2022, when it was mentioned of the $23 million overpayment, and which was about, $23 million of overpayment, which is about 16% of the PUA that was sent out.
2%.
Right?
2%.
Okay, in the paper it said 16. I'm reading from an article that I have here. It was about 16%
If you
or
take
23.
$808 million and you take $23 million out of that, that equates to 2%.
Right. So my question is, you talked about 850 that was waived. Earlier you were discussing about how much was waived. What is the amount of that 850 applicants that was waived? What was the money amount that was waived?
Over $5 million.
5 million, okay. So are we getting closer to the 23? Because we received a single audit report that was issued out, and for federal funds, about 41 million of that was in questionable costs. We know that the bulk of that was $23 million, and that all had to do with PUA. So in that indication, you're saying that 5 million of that 23 million that even you quoted in this newspaper article way back then, you're saying 5 million of the 23 has already been forgiven.
About that much, give or take, because it washes up and down. Some are found disqualified, so that money will go up. Some are found qualified, will go down. But just so you know, that 23 million questionable costs, that was something that the questionable cost is just overpayments. These are people who are paid through fraud, misrepresentation, and because they were not qualified. Just to give you an idea, which was 2% of the total 808 million. In the States, overpayments reach 30, sometimes higher percent. California was around $20 billion in overpayments. Ohio, $2.1 billion in overpayment. So we had, as a percentage, some of the lowest in the nation. And when it's inherent that when you're giving out that much money and people self-attestation, to qualify, that some of these people are going to get money that didn't qualify or were fraud. And we did some of the most, we audit and we did it, but when you're giving that much money out, 23 million of that is a small number. And so now, with the waiving of the unfraud and unmisrepresentation, the US DOL several months ago came out with a laxed waiver requirements. That was in the newspapers too. Before it was very strict. They came out with the lax waiver requirements, and that's why I've been going on the radio and posting it out there and extending it to tell everybody who has an overpayment that's not because of fraud or because you lied. It's because you maybe didn't understand, or you were confused, or it was just a mistake, to put in for that waiver request, and I will do everything in my power to forgive it.
Okay.
And that's why this month we had 850, because they're coming in now. We have over 500 requests for waivers, and they keep coming in, and I keep telling them, get it in, so that we can do it.
Well, it's very important to us because the 41 million is quite substantial when it was given to on the single. No, I'm talking about the single audit coming out on questionable federal costs. It's not just Department of Labor. It's 41 million, which is quite substantial. And we all know that if the federal government requests for us to return that money, it's going to come out of the general fund. So we got to make sure we have that money. So what's really important to us, I think, is if you provide us, because it is the bulk of that 41 million is coming from Department of Labor on the PUA. Let us know how far down you've gotten these waivers. Right now you're telling me about 5 million of the 23, or is it, so we would like to know.
Probably around 20 million. It's so dynamic, 21 million. It moves up and down, but as we get finished with the waivers. We have appeals going on. This is what's ongoing that will be going on for the next several months or 6 months. That will start washing out the number to a more firm. And then as guidance comes out with US DOL, because personally I feel the states with these kind of numbers in the billions of dollars, that something is going to have to come. And that's what we're waiting for.
Okay, Mr. Director,
and that's what we're
going to concentrate on Guam. I understand what the other states are doing and the percentage that they owe, but we're going to see the concentrate on Guam. Right, and I know that Department of Labor have done such a great job in providing information or assistance.
And
go ahead, Greg.
As Greg was, the overpayments is owed by the claimants, not by the government.
Right, but what happens if the claimant does not have, can you imagine the people who need this money and they've spent it, and then we go back to them and say, okay, you got to give us back $5,000, and they say, well, we've already spent it. The federal government doesn't care. They just want that funding back, whether it is coming from the individual or the government of Guam. But I would appreciate, Mr. Director, having like a monthly, like we do with the CRER, right, Mr. Chair? The CRER tells us where we are, if we're in the red or, in the green, on funding. So because it's such a huge amount of money, it's important to let us know so that we can breathe a little bit when it's time to
Sure,
appropriate to other agencies. A monthly report would be very helpful, so we know where we're going. And the comment that you made, in particular, into that article, it's a quote from you: "The waiver application cannot go on indefinitely." So I don't know if there is a deadline for these.
August 1st is the deadline.
August 1st, and then after that, then whoever doesn't come forward, then we'll have to deal with that when that comes. And
The
if
waiver
any
process has
repayment
been
back to the federal
almost
government.
ongoing for a year. So we had to I extended it for an extra 2 weeks because the demand and the lines we saw an influx of people coming in, and it make sure that everybody has an opportunity for a waiver. We encourage, and I'm glad you brought that up, I encourage all those out there who that have an overpayment, that's not fraud and misrepresentation, to come into our office, and we will assist you filling out that application to make sure that you tell your story the best way possible for me to be able to consider your waiver.
Okay, and Mr. De La Sola, do you happen to have a representative at the One Stop that was just recently opened to assist individuals regarding COVID? Do you have a representative there?
Say that again?
At the One Stop, there's like this, a center.
Yes, we do.
Oh, you do have a rep
Yes.
there. Okay, that's very helpful because
Yes.
they can probably see if the deadline is August. Next, the ARP funding that was provided to you was a little over $1 million.
Yes.
Right now, they're showing a balance still that has not been used, about $999,000 still in there. What are you guys anticipating besides what you mentioned?
Majority of that is the 2 junior economists that we are actively recruiting for and working together with Gary and UOG. We're trying to find some young economists that are willing to come up and get trained by Gary. It's been a challenge during COVID, and so I know that we're getting some candidates and that we're hoping to get some results. Like I said, finding an economist on Guam has been a challenge.
Yeah.
So that's why we're actually, instead of looking for an economist, we're looking for somebody that has not even a major, a minor in economics that may be interested in coming over and start learning how we do our surveys, processes, and working with Gary to train into those positions. So that's
Are you
actively being recruited.
Are you going to hire in-house, or are you going to contract that out
We're going to
for an economist?
We're trying to hire
In-house.
for our department. As I mentioned,
okay.
Gary has over 41 years in
Yes,
Guam.
he does.
So
it's
we
time.
need to use this as a form of succession training, get them worked up, get them into the surveys, and get them working.
And you are aware that this $999,000, I mean, I know it's not going to go to one economist, the whole amount, but it does end, this funding will
Yes.
end in a couple years, and then you're going to have to sustain that. Well, Gary, I don't know if he's going to retire. I like him. I hope he stays on longer.
Me
Still
too.
looks young. He
Me
still
too.
can go. Another 10, 20 years. He probably won't like that when I said that. But and then also your reserves, my last line of questioning. I'm always concerned about how agencies, they're appropriating a certain amount, and then next thing you know, some of that money is taken away and put into a reserve. And then sometimes at the end of the year, they're not even given that funding back to the department and agency. So right now, I'm looking at your agency showing $190,116 from the general fund in reserves sitting, and in the special funds, which I didn't realize we could put those in reserves, but under the special funds, you had $237,466. Did you receive any? Was not received, but was there any reserves done in 21 that you did not receive back to the agency?
Hi. All the reserves in FY21 was released to the department. In FY22, whenever we request for a reserve to be released, it is automatically done by BBMR. Justification just has to be provided to the budget office, and they will approve your reserve release once you provide the justification.
Have you requested for 2022 yet? We're coming close to the end of the fiscal year.
We have requested for reserve in 2022, yes, and it has been released.
So there's zero amount in reserves for Department of Labor.
No, not zero amount in reserve. There is still in reserve. We request for reserves to be released on an as-needed basis, because we do understand that the reserve is to help reduce the...
Yeah, and Helen, when do you request for the reserves? Is it like, we're in July right now, right? August, September's coming, and if you're going to utilize the funding there, of course, sometimes it takes some time because of its procurement or, needing supplies. When do you request for that reserves?
Well, typically we request for reserves when we project out what our needs are going to be. So if we see that a certain division doesn't have sufficient funding and it's locked in reserve, then we'll make that request to the budget office. We are actually on track with our spending, and we typically would request maybe, I want to say, by mid-August, where we start to look and see where we're at. But we've been maintaining our general fund and our special fund, and we've been on track with our spending.
Yeah, I remember that of you. You're making sure that every penny is spent when it comes to your budget. That's all for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Please
Senator.
extend my best wishes to all the employees over at Department of Labor. You might be the representative, but those guys are the backbone of this agency, and I greatly appreciate all the work that they do there. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Thank
Senator
you.
Tello. Senator Brown, do you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and certainly good afternoon to Director De La Sola and his staff. I did want to inquire, and I assume that these are temporary positions, but the number of
I
unclassified...
can't really hear you, Senator.
I'm sorry,
sorry.
my mic is on. Maybe the audio has to check over there. Try again. Are we on?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I never have a problem articulating, so it might just be the equipment. Okay. I just wanted to ask, I assume your numbers here with regards to your unclassified positions, are these the temporary positions that you hired to help process during the pandemic, or because it's unusually high? I'm assuming this is not a normal staffing pattern for your agency.
There's a 15 people one, right?
You have for 2023, 16 individuals listed.
Oh, do you want me to answer it, or you want to?
Is it projected?
Okay.
Or should I use your-
The unclassified positions that we have on the general fund and manpower development fund, are those the positions you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, this is what I have listed here. You have other positions that are not listed here?
Oh, no, this is it.
I
So,
assume this is your
yes,
total consolidated budget for 2023?
yes.
Okay.
So the unclassified is reflecting 16. That's our survey workers. We have survey workers. We also have our labor law enforcement specialists and our customer service reps that were authorized in the budget bill under the miscellaneous provisions to hire as limited term appointments.
And these are transient positions, or how long do you keep employees?
Greg will respond. That's his division.
Okay.
So, yeah, Senator, we have in the past advocated to use LTAs for those positions that are going to be supporting the military realignment, because as we staff up, during the peak years of the buildup, when the numbers start going back down, we're going to be left with a bunch of classified employees. So it's better to hire them LTA so that we're able to adjust staffing appropriately based off of workload.
What is the period of time well, I understand, it's not the traditional, I mean, I guess we should commend you for doing that, but, we have people that are in these positions for years, and I don't think that's how the structure was set up. I mean, we pretty much want to see unclassified positions, certainly here, at the executive office, and then, normally in a department, it's the director and deputy, and maybe if they have a board, they have a secretary, and that's about the extent of unclassified, because this can go on and on and on and on. So are all of these other unclassified, I assume, except for the director and the deputy, under your division, or are they in other divisions within Department of Labor?
Well, remember the buildup on all the enforcement divisions, it's not just alien labor. It's wage and hour. You're going to get more instances of workplace injuries. You're going to get more instances of fair employment violations. So, several years ago, we had, discussed with the legislature about using this model because, like I said, when we start to see the numbers go down, are we going to have to go through layoffs? It's better to adjust staffing up and down based off of workload. And, we're very judicious. We're not hiring people that just sit around doing anything. We're super busy over there.
Yeah, I assume those of us that are unclassified are not hanging around either and super busy too, which encompasses pretty much all of us here, so. No, I appreciate you elaborating. That's why I was inquiring. Is it just your division or other divisions within Department of Labor? And how about, how, in terms of the, and certainly you had quite a large program, certainly Director De La Sola, that you had to administer, obviously, during the pandemic. Have you geared down those employees now? Do you, because how many, like at your peak, did you have coming on board to assist you with all that processing? Because you had a lot of processing, a lot of verifying, a lot of, assistance that you provided out in the villages as well, for people that needed to come in and apply for the program and giving them guidance, on how they could participate and so forth. So at your height, how many additional personnel did you have to bring on board, and where are you with that now? Is that totally completed? Have you wrapped all of that up?
I think at our peak we were about 70.
Okay.
And that was to implement, standing in GCC and all the resource libraries and everybody during the peak.
Yes.
And we're down to about 15, which are handling the hundreds of waivers and also the appeals process. We have that; those are ongoing until completed, and those are all being funded by the PUA program and the monies. None of them are affecting us locally.
I'm happy. I can justify receiving the funds and getting that whole issue cleared. What is that total? We heard a figure of what? 41 million the other day. I don't know if that's all attributed to Department of Labor, but what was your amount for your department that so
you're talking
far
about
is,
the overpayments?
Yeah, that has to
that
be,
was last
to be
year was roughly about 23 million. As I explained, that was 2% of the monies that we gave out, which is a very, very, very small amount. And you've got to expect when you give out that much money that quickly, you're going to get fraud, and you're going to get people misrepresentation, and you get people that are confused about the whole program. And that's why the lax waiver rules came out several months ago with labor, allowing for me to be able to waive those overpayments for those individuals who were confused or not sure about the program, as long as it's not, as I keep saying, fraud or misrepresentation, then it's almost waivable, of course, on a case-by-case. And that's why we're so busy right now, taking care of all those people and helping our people.
And what do you estimate your time frame will be, probably, to see most of that, if not all of it, wrapped up, you think? How much more time would you need to have that in place?
How long do you think?
Our current grant expires in June of 2023.
Okay.
We just got additional instructions from U.S. Department of Labor for continued administrative services to operate the program after the CARES Act expiration date. So we will be submitting, and it came with the $210,000 in funding for PUA and FPUC. So I've got to sit with Greg, and we're going to work out our details and our action plan. But currently, the expiration date for PUA is June 2023.
So another
effectively,
11 months or so then. Huh?
They're funding us for as long as we need the funding to close out and make sure that everybody has an appeal and and the waivers are all complete, and most of all, the reporting.
Sure.
That's going to be a huge, then audits and all that stuff. So that is going to be, that's why it's stretched out for such a long period of time. They're not putting any undue burden on the local state.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, overall, I mean, you had quite an undertaking with your staff during that time, and certainly appreciate all the efforts that you and your staff made to do a lot of the informational outreach. Probably the most popular director for quite some time besides public health, but we're not participating in the program, but hearing about it and knowing that the individuals that are out there that were in need or were eligible for it, were able to receive the information, were able to receive the assistance that they needed to help get our community through that time. So that's certainly appreciated to see that you could gear up as quickly as you did to accommodate, the infusion of a substantial amount of additional work that was not part of your normal annual operations. I did want to ask, I see there's no funding for drug testing. I'm assuming that your inspector positions and stuff, are they designated positions? Would they be required to be drug tested?
Yes, they're designated positions.
Have they been drug tested in the past year, 2, 3, 4, 5?
We had 2 drug testing just in the last 2 years. And no, we haven't done an annual drug testing for the safety inspectors. It's only the safety inspectors and the directors that are designated test position.
And any reason why no random drug testing? I mean, drug testing for designated positions can be performed at any time. Any reason why?
No, I don't have.
To be honest with you, we were so busy doing other things, but sure, we can do that for you.
Well, I just think it's an expectation. I mean, we obviously have a major drug problem
I
on our
agree.
island,
Well,
and I think in terms of those key positions, and I understand that employees are tested when they come on board, and that's wonderful. But in terms of just these critical designated positions, there are reasons why they're designated, and we just want to make sure that everyone that's performing as a public servant in these key capacities are all there.
I agree.
Well,
And not engaged and involved in illegal or illicit drug dealing or,
only have one position.
intake here in our community, so.
only have one position?
We only have one designated testing position in the general fund, and that's the safety inspector, labor law enforcement.
Do you
for
have
DOSH.
others that are funded elsewhere?
Is under the federal.
I'm sure the federal, private,
Yes.
every single
No,
federal
I'm
grant
just,
I've
I'm
seen,
just,
yeah.
because you asked about drug testing.
Yeah, but there's zero,
Yeah.
there's nothing here designated,
So it's not
right?
there.
I agree
So-
with you.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we can implement and make
Okay.
sure that we stay on top of.
I
That's a good
appreciate it.
idea.
I'm sure for all your federal grants and stuff, that's pretty standard language that they put towards the back, requiring that, we have drug-free workplace. I just think as a government, it'd be helpful to make sure particularly our designated positions are addressed.
Sure.
Other than that, Mr. Chair, I mean, a lot of the key points have already been asked and answered. So again, appreciate the time and effort of Director De La Sola and his staff to be here to respond to our questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. I was going to ask a question about the drug testing, but you caught that one this time. Yes, ma'am. You have a follow-up? Go for it.
Just a follow-up, I think Greg Massey thought he was going to get away with not having to answer a lot of questions. Sitting on the side saying, wow, this is first time, man, I'm not going to be. Can you give us an update on what's happening with the military buildup and the H-2 worker scenario with regards to the DOD, the latest amendment that was stricken, I believe was stricken, to give us an insight, because Greg, a lot of our people cannot even afford now to even put an extension or a garage anymore. The cost has skyrocketed, and even getting a home, let alone an extension, it's so difficult. Outside kitchen, forget it. It's going to cost you, $50,000 now when it used to cost us like, $1,000 or something. But can you kind of give us an update of what's happening?
Sure. Thanks. I thought I was going to get away with it, but I didn't. So currently, right now, we have a record number of H-2s on island. We're at 2,924, which is more than it's been since 1995. We're almost back to the point where I don't have records. We're back to the point where we don't even have numbers in the past. So it's going well. We are in the first year of the military buildup. The peak numbers are hitting us. We do have approved petitions out there for about 6,500 workers. So we're at 2,900 right now. There's approvals out there for 65. Granted, the deployments come, and COVID, it's just starting to open up with the embassy in Manila and restrictions. So that has kind of throttled down some of the deployments. But it's looking good right now on the military side. On the civilian side, as David mentioned earlier, we worked with USCIS and got a process out for that. In the most recent NDAA exemption or the change in language that we had, it allowed for projects that were adversely affected or supporting. Dave met with USCIS and was, really, we worked well with them so that we got new guidance out from USCIS, which is it's kind of incredible that they would actually do guidance based off of our input. But we were able to get them to agree that housing developments are supporting the military realignment, and it's in writing, published on their website. And then we got the adverse effect one that would help for those other projects that, like for instance, a single family home, I go out and get a home loan. Before we couldn't connect that to the build-up at all in any way. Now we're able to do that. Now we're just trying to break through that chilling effect. There's still a lot of contractors out there that haven't gotten the message as much as we, put it out there through the immigration attorneys and through the industry. But yeah, if we should be able to get H2s for almost anything now. Granted, in construction, the NDA exemption only allows for if you have the pillars are that you have to have a contract and it has to be for construction, renovation, or repairs. So your non-construction guys, like we used to have, like dive instructors and parachute instructors and hotel workers, those are still kind of locked out at this point, unless you can show temporary need. But otherwise, for the home, the home building industry, it's looks really bright right now. It's just a matter of contractors actually getting out there and getting those contracts through.
So we
can you tell us,
can't force them to apply. All we can do is
Right.
make the
Absolutely.
conditions favorable for them, and everything right now is favorable.
Yeah.
If they apply, we feel fairly confident that we can get them approved for housing and businesses or whatever needs to be done. It's just they got to come into us and start applying. Like 2 companies already mentioned have done that, used my letter, and got approved.
That's great. That's good news. Greg, can you tell me how many of that is not military buildup that you've approved for H2 workers outside the fence?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Can you tell us how many of those application H2 workers so far, like at least this year, are coming to Guam for work outside the military?
Oh, I actually don't have those numbers with me at the moment, but just in general, contractors typically aren't going to apply for inside, outside the fence kind of stuff. It's always a combination. So I'd have to actually parse that through and go through every case and look at what projects are there. And as long as they've got them all listed on what's called a project summary sheet, they can use that workforce as needed because there's different phases of the project. So it's a hard number to chase, but we are seeing a lot. And as Dave said, the 2 that they couldn't connect at all was the Don Don Donkey and the iLearn Academy. Those are 2 large projects that got approved through the adverse effect. So it's looking good, but one of the problems that we're having too, since you mentioned it, is that the legislature might want to jump on would be trying to relax workforce housing requirements. That's also what's throttling down the deployments. It's really hard to find workforce housing. It's hard to build because you have to build on M1 zones, and it has to be through the Land Use Commission. So not only do you have to have M1, but you got to go and get conditional use at the same time. So those are factors. If we can make it so that it's easier for contractors to build workforce housing, then they might use that a little bit more and stop using residential apartments, which will free up apartment units for our people. Right now that's about the only real option they have. We will be coming, I guess, a little bit later. The governor's asked us to try to champion that cause outside the budget hearing, of course, but I wanted to put it on this since you asked. But once we get that done, I think you're going to see the numbers come up a lot, and that affects your smaller contractors who they can't go out and build a barracks if they're going to bring in 10 guys, and they have to find apartments. And if you can't find apartments, then kind of sometimes they'll just hold back. So that's something that we'll be working with you folks.
Thank you so much, Greg, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And Dave, take that as a signal or as a hint. Put it together. get it to us. I think the three of us are actually looking forward to that. We want to find a way to get the housing industry going, so the price can go down. So we can get the outside kitchen, we can get everything else done, because everybody's just waiting.
We
And
are,
if we can do it,
working on that. We're making sure that we get the input from all the industries and the providers to make sure that we craft something that would be a great solution for us. Thanks.
Yeah, Senator, everybody has a different opinion when you start bringing this up. I thought it was going to be easy and that we were just going to send something over to you folks, and then everybody's got a different opinion now. So
if you just put something together that you guys believe in, then we can start talking. Then we can ask whoever you reached out to, so that we can make an announcement that, hey, come to the hearing. Don't just text us, but come to the hearing so we can hear it. All right? That being said, the committee will conclude this budget hearing. Committee will continue to receive testimony. I would be expecting your written testimony for today there, Dave, and everyone else. And Mr. Tovey's got away with speaking today, so that's okay. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations and Housing. Submit it via email to Senator Joe S. Agustin at gmail.com or to my office located at Rand Care Building, 2nd floor, Suite 203, 761 South Marine Corps Drive, Tumuning, Guam. This is Zeus Masi for your attendance today and participating in today's hearing. For those at home, thank you for watching. The budget hearing on Bill 276-36 COR relative to the Department of Labor is duly heard and is now adjourned at 3:07. Please be safe. Take care.